Hi guys, how's it going? Okay, so we're going to do a long transmission today because it has been a while and there is a bunch of stuff that we need to talk about. So first off, let's get the whole stupid Trump thing out of the way. I didn't really want to be giving it any attention, but unfortunately I'm seeing a lot of people on my Facebook going, if you support this, get off my timeline. Oh, let's pray for our country. Guys, okay, I'll be honest, I didn't watch what happened because I don't really like puppet theatre. And that's exactly what they are, okay? You know that they're just actors for the deep state. But obviously all of this has been staged and orchestrated to look like, oh, he's such a threat to the system and we must vote for him because he's really going to take out the cabal. Guys, I've told you so many times, this is a huge psyop. The whole QAnon thing is a huge psyop to hijack the Awakening Collective, turn it into a partisan issue, left, right, and to usher in the second beast system with the Antichrist, who is the Moshiach, Donald Trump, and build the third temple in Jerusalem. Okay, so if you don't know that, now you know. Watch some of my previous videos. Also, my mentor Emily Joy Harris and her husband Aleo have talked about it extensively for years and really broken it down very, very well. So yeah, all the world's a stage. And I don't know, I was talking to somebody about it saying they're like, oh, how skilled a marksman would you need to be to plan that where it just skims his ear and doesn't miss and doesn't hit him in the head? I've spoken about this before, okay, in my video on the Queen's departure, reptilian genetics and things like that. We've had cloning technology for decades, okay? You do know that just because they don't talk openly about the fact that they have cloning technology doesn't mean that they're not using it, okay? Do you remember all of Saddam Hussein's body doubles? How they just brought that out? I mean, you'll know. You've seen how Biden looks so different every time he appears, and it's probably, he probably does have Alzheimer's or dementia, whatever it is, but his clone is probably also glitching. So anyway, look, I hope I don't discredit myself when I say that, but people need to be aware. People need to be aware. They need to look into these things, okay? There's a lot of classified information that you're not party to as a normie that isn't part of the powerful elite, okay? There's a lot of stuff that we're not told about, government secret technology, okay, that's not disclosed to the public. And cloning technology is one of them. So yeah, it's all a ruse just to get people to vote for him so that he can bring in the usher in the full New World Order agenda with the third temple in Jerusalem, okay? This is why we're talking about Palestine so much, okay? This is why they're being so brazen in Palestine, because they can, okay? They can just kill children live on air and nobody's going to do anything about it. Or okay, maybe a few thousand awakened starseeds, but in general, most people have been completely hijacked and taken over by the nothing and are just running so many overlays and light body reversals that they're just in this brain dead zombie mode, survival mode. And okay, this is not I'm not saying this to be disparaging, okay, because I know that many of us have pretty much everybody on the planet is in various levels of enslavement, okay, from house slaves to field slaves. There's racial hierarchies. That's one of the tools that they use to divide people and keep other people in check. And then they also use certain hierarchical structures like governments, police force, and things like that. But the real shadow government who's in control, you'll never know their names. So, we can talk about who the Illuminati bloodline families are, but they're not really, they're lackeys for whoever is in actual charge. But anyway, that's not what I came on to talk about today. Today I wanted to talk about my experience. So I want to talk about my experience being arrested after a protest and how I came out victorious and sued the police, because it may help you if you're going to a lot of protests at the moment. If you're involved in the fight for collective liberation, you may want to know a couple of things or two about your natural rights as a human being. And it's very obvious when we break it down. Like once we break it down, you'll be like, well, of course. But there's a lot of fundamental principles, just logic, common sense principles. But some people would say that they can be a little bit deep or a little bit spiritual, that people need to understand going forward, okay? Around your sovereignty. So it basically involves, just a consciousness shift that you need to make. And most of us who are going to protest have already made that shift. Okay, but there may still be some people who don't really understand the process, how, if you do get arrested at a march, what kind of process should you follow if you want to seek some kind of justice or even compensation, which you can get. So I'll share my experience. In 2017, I went to the Million Mask March. And what is the Million Mask March? This is now the second time I'm recording this video, okay? Because every time I do, recently, since I started talking about Palestine, every time I do long form video, there's some problem with it. Like I will always lose 20 minutes of footage and I have to do it again. Or something will happen, the file will get corrupted, I'll have to film it again. Okay, there's serious interference that doesn't want me to talk about the work that I do and how it relates to the Palestine issue, okay, which is why I need to kind of push through and do it. And I'm sorry that, it's taken me a couple of weeks to come out with another long transmission, okay? And in my next transmission, I'll explain why and what's been happening in the fields. But basically, in 2017, I went to the Million Mask March. Now, the Million Mask March is to commemorate Guy Fawkes, who was an British anarchist revolutionary from the 1500s, I'm not sure, who was foiled in a plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament. There was basically a group of revolutionaries who wanted to take out the government. Wouldn't that be a worthy aspiration? And somebody had tipped off their cousin or something who was an MP and said, listen, don't go into work today or tonight or whatever, get out. And so he obviously tipped off somebody else, been there's going to be a plot on the House of Parliament, and so they went and they caught Guy Fawkes. And so every November, on the 5th of November, remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. And that's the rhyme that we grow up with. And then, November 5th, everybody goes and watches the fireworks and celebrates the fact that we burnt this brave revolutionary anarchist at the stake and tortured him. And one of the other fireworks that they use on this occasion is a Catherine wheel. Look up the history of a Catherine wheel. It's messed up. Okay, November 5th is such a satanic holiday. They have a firework that commemorates a saint, a Christian saint, who obviously had a Christ awakening. She awoke to the one, to the Christ stream, the narrow pathway back to God, started accessing certain multidimensional abilities that made her a little bit hard to harm, to physically harm or to kill, like what happened with Yeshua. And they tied her to a wheel and tried to crush her bones, and she wouldn't die, okay, because she had the Spirit of Christ moving through her, okay, it's a miracle frequency. Look up her story. They have a firework to commemorate her torture device, and they burn it on the same day that they celebrate the burning of the stake of Guy Fawkes, who probably also woke up to how satanic the government is all those years ago. So obviously the film V for Vendetta has become quite iconic because it represents Guy Fawkes. And first time I ever saw November 5th March, okay, they have them all over the world. First time I ever saw one was in Bangkok. And I didn't really know that much about that film back then. But I do remember being at one of the shopping malls, and I was like, why are there thousands of people outside with V for Vendetta masks on? Like, what's that about? And then slowly it came to my attention over time that there's huge marches that happen all over the world to call for an end to government tyranny and government corruption. And, you know, Guy Fawkes has become a symbol of hope and revolution and anarchy. Anarchy basically means no masters and no slaves. It doesn't mean complete freedom without rules. Rules are absolutely required for true anarchy to actually work. Okay, we're going to talk about some of them today. Okay, we're going to be talking about natural law in this video. Yeah, I went to that march. In London, they've become quite iconic, and they've started to gain a lot of traction, and they tend to attract... They've been attracting larger and larger numbers up until, I don't know, I think this one that I went to was in 2017. And it was quite big. There were, you know, several thousands of people there. And the police were being really aggressive because obviously it's an anarchist march, it's anti the system. And even though the police are sworn to protect and serve the people, they also swear allegiance to the crown, okay? Because obviously the Queen has well, she's dead now, but had the divine right to rule over the people. The people and the Queen were one and the same, okay? Originally, according to the ancient covenant, that kings and queens made with the land and the people was that they were supposed to serve the people. They were supposed to be servants of the people, but obviously we know that the Windsors aren't that. And that they are responsible for the deaths of many, many thousands of Indigenous children all over the world. Please look up the story of William Combs, okay? I talked about all of this in my YouTube video. The Queen's departure, reptilian genetics, sovereign codes. And that video was also about sovereignty, but we did talk about the disappearance of 10 Indigenous Canadian children at the Kamloops school in somewhere in Canada after a visit from Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. And for years we were told that we were crazy conspiracy theorists, and then what happened a couple of years ago? Okay, we've been saying this for a very, very long time. A couple of years ago, they discovered mass graves of children under that particular residential school, okay? So where there's smoke, there's fire. So anyway, the police swear allegiance to the crown, which is problematic, okay? Because it makes them not the servant of the people, but the enemy of the people if they don't take the knee and adhere to their vow to protect and serve the people. So they were being aggressive, they were being violent, they were employing crowd control tactics like kettling, so they would let some people go down that road and then they would form a barricade and not let the rest of us go. So it's kind of like crowd dispersion tactics. And so it got to a point where we were just straggling everywhere, like we were so dispersed. At this point I'm, there with like maybe 20, 30 other activists, and we're not like a big cohesive group. Like I didn't even know any of them. I actually went by myself. But I was just like, okay, maybe it's time for me to go home now. So I'm just walking to the tube station. And then as we're walking through Chinatown, we came across this amazing busker. And he was like singing like peace songs, like Bob Dylan and Bob Marley and all the Bobs, basically, all the peace stuff, all the 60s. And, obviously the Million Mile March attracts a lot of awakened people, high consciousness people. It's not just all really angry, let's smash windows type of people, okay? Generally the march is very peaceful with a lot of very lovely hippies and like medicine workers, energy healers and shamans and normal people and plumbers and electricians who are just sick of being enslaved by the system. So anyway, we sat down and we were all listening and having a great time, listening to this busker. I got chatting to a couple of people, we took some pictures. I'll see if I can find those pictures and include them. But then, like I said, okay, there were 30 activists, not very many of us, and we're not a cohesive group, okay? We don't even really know each other. We did have some interaction talking to each other, but not all of us, right? And some members of the public. They had deployed about 300 police officers to kettle us, basically form like three rows of like 100 police officers each, all with their arms locked. It's called a kettle, right? So they're kettling us in. It's a form of like imprisonment, right? And then it was a little bit excessive, okay? It was like using a hammer to crack a nut, okay? There was no need for it. But as I found out later, the police will usually employ these kind of very aggressive tactics towards the end of marches in order to look, I'll tell you what happened, okay? And then I'll explain why they do it. I was just like, well, what's going on here? And then one of the activists was like, oh God, okay, you're about to find out. Some of them were obviously a little bit more seasoned with this type of march. I've been going to marches since I was 16, but they've all been it's just different, always different issues, and different issues tend to attract a different police response. Million Mask March is particularly nasty police response. Same with the medical tyranny marches, also a very, very nasty police response. Anything where they know that we're awake and we know the part and the role that they're playing, and we can see the interconnectedness of how the system oppresses and enslaves everyone, that's when they get the most violent. If it's, I've been to like animal rights, PETA stuff where they get a bunch of hot girls to just stand around in a bikini and go, don't eat animals, and those are important as well. But the police at those tend to be a lot nicer and just a bit more friendly. They're probably the same with like climate change people. Where was I going? Okay, so then basically what happened, I did find out, the police just basically, the one police officer comes over to the busker and she's like, very polite, how British police and British people can be in general. She was like, hello sir, that was lovely, would you like to have, we've got a police escort for you, I'd like to escort you out safely. And then so they took him out, and then they also said to the public, come on, let's leave the area, and took the public out and left all of us activists, who they could just tell who, people who had signs or like a mask or just looked like a hippie was left. And then they just launched on everybody, just grab it. Like I had 3 guys grab me, push me up against this Korean barbecue restaurant with my face in the window. So humiliating. They love it. They love to humiliate us, and there's press there, okay? And this is how I found out. This is what they do, okay? Because in the media, they'll obviously want to try and paint a certain narrative that maybe they were violent protesters, but the good, lovely police who are here to protect and serve you all kept it under control and arrested the violent, dissident, terroristic protesters who are all unwashed and need to get a job, right? So they put me in handcuffs and asked me a bunch of questions, asked me my name, where do I live, and this is where you got to make the shift, okay? And a lot of people know this deep down, but they don't want to make the shift because they don't want any trouble. But I'm telling you, I came out on top in this whole story. So you are not, you might have a little bit of uncomfortability, but you got to have some ovaries about the situation. I'm not going to say balls because I think ovaries are stronger. So nothing against men. I love men, but and they're very strong and protective. But balls are kind of soft. We know that, right? So where was I going? Yeah, so they're asking me these questions, and obviously I understand my rights as a sovereign being, and that nobody who has a badge or a uniform or anything has control over me or dominion over me, okay? The only authority that I recognize is the big guy upstairs. So when they asked me these questions, firstly, because I don't recognize their authority, I know I'm not obliged to. If a guy comes up to you on the street and just shows you a badge and asks you what your name is and where do you live, you're not obliged to tell him. I can understand that we might collectively all agree to give the police certain powers under certain circumstances, but if I haven't committed a crime, then those aren't those circumstances, okay? And if they're being tyrannical or trying to deprive me of my rights, or are actually committing a crime against me, like they just did, where they assaulted me, and are now holding me against my will, I don't think that I'm naturally obligated to answer their questions. And I had been doing a lot of research on, for many years, on, natural law, common law principles, the difference between common law and statutory law, just because I've been involved in activism for many years, like since I was maybe 16. So around the age of 22, I was introduced to a guy called John Harris. If you don't know who that is, you should look him up, okay? He is the grandfather or the creator, I believe, according to my research. Maybe there was somebody that came before him, but of the modern free man movement in the UK. And he was teaching a lot of people about just their sovereign rights under natural law, and how we have our own constitution in the UK that is the Magna Carta. So those are basically our common law rights as declared. But, you can go really deep with this stuff, and you can, be like, our rights don't even come from the Magna Carta, they come from God. And they're inherent in nature, and we are people of the earth, and we're, men and women of the living soil, okay? We're not persons, okay? A lot of the study that you'll need to do if you want to go deeper into this is understanding legalese, okay, which is the language of the Law Society, and that's another thing that John Harris would teach people before he was very suspiciously unalived. So anyway, I'd been researching these things for many years, so I knew that I wasn't obligated to answer their questions. So I just asked him, I was like, am I obliged to answer your questions? And the guy was just like, no, you don't have to answer anything. And I'm like, good, I thought so. And he goes, so what's your address? And I was just like, I'm not going to tell you. And so then they just took my bag and ruffled through my bag and went through my personal property and found my ID, and then took the details from there, which I don't know if they're allowed to do without a warrant. I can't remember exactly what, I'll get deeper into the story, but I did get somebody to sue them. I hired a lawyer to sue them eventually, but, I'm kind of spoiling it a little bit, but, I want y'all to know that the story does end well. Obviously, because I'm here telling you, right? What was I going to say? So I didn't answer the questions, and they read me my rights. Okay, they're just like, okay, we're going to read you your rights. You have violated Act 14, section something, and Act 17, section something, public order offence. And I was just like, right, those are acts of parliament, right? And they were like, yeah. And I was just like, okay, that's statutory legislation. I don't have a contract with you. And I forgot to mention, before they read me my rights, they said, we're going to read you your rights. Do you understand? Now, in legalese, do you understand means, do you consent to stand under my authority? So then what happens is you start entering into an energetic contract with them. This goes very deep on very multiple different levels, okay? This is a form of like black magic doublespeak, where they'll use words that are have different meanings to what you think that they mean in English, but in legalese they mean something different. So for example, the word must in legalese means may in English, and the word summons in legalese in English is an invitation. Okay, a court is their corporate place of business. Okay, same with the government. The government is actually a corporate entity. So I just said, no, I don't understand. And they were like, what don't you understand? I'm just like, I just don't understand. And it just kept on saying, I don't understand. And when they said, do you agree that you violated these 2 public order acts? And I just went, no, because I never consented to agree to those public order acts. And they were like, well, it's the law. And I was like, it's statutory law. So the difference is basically common law is the law of the land, and then statutory law is based on admiralty law. Okay, it's the law of the sea. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be like an expert on all of this. Okay, I have been researching it on and off for several years. Okay, but it's not been like a main subtopic of study. But I do know enough to be able to transmit the information to you on a basic level, and then you can go and research it more. I'm also going to be researching it more because this is going to be something super, super important for all of us to understand going forward, okay? So when they ask you if you understand and then read you your rights, it actually works on a much deeper level where it actually triggers somebody's slave programs, where they consent to standing under the authority of this person, and this person now has authority. You're basically giving your power over to them. You've consented to stand under their authority. Okay, is deep. People don't understand how deep law goes. Okay, once you have entered into a contract with somebody, you now got, what do they call them, golden handcuffs, okay? And that's how they look in the field. When I do field work with clients and they have these kind of mental slavery programs, it will appear as like, you know, shackles, often like, handcuffs, shackles, chains, sometimes Freemasonry symbolism. So sometimes you'll see like checkerboard floors, or I'll see certain like manuscripts, like, you know, I'll sometimes see like, you know, ancient like law manuscripts on like universal law and stuff like that, and they'll be like bound with like a padlock around. Or sometimes it'll appear as like sigils in the field, like black magic sigils, and then you might see like, you know, judges with like, you know, wigs, and, you know, it can vary depending on what the frequency of the enslavement program is in the individual, and also where they're from. Things like that can influence how it shows up in their field. But breaking these enslavement programs is not difficult to do. You just have to make the shift in your mind, that you recognize that you are a human that emerges from the earth, and from the people, then the government emerges as a service to the people, okay? Governments are public servants. Police are also public servants. They're not supposed to be stripping you of your rights when you haven't done anything wrong, okay? You demanding due process or representation, or your right to protest peacefully, to peacefully assemble, to organize, all of these are natural rights as human beings that we are entitled to, okay? Just because governments have decided that you're not allowed to do those things doesn't mean that you're not actually allowed to do them as a living human, okay? Under natural law, these are all inherent rights, okay? A right under natural law, God's law, not man's law, is anything that isn't a wrong, okay? It's there in the language, okay? Anything that doesn't cause harm or loss to anyone else is a right, and you have the right to do it, okay? Including peaceful protest. So them trying to tell me that I'm not allowed, so basically the act in question was that I had deviated from the path. So it's just like, what? Are you telling me that because I'm now a protester in your eyes and no longer a living woman, can only walk on certain roads? Like, you must be having a laugh, okay? Because I'm a natural woman, a natural human being, and I can walk on whatever roads are publicly available to anyone to walk on, okay? I understand, I believe in private property. I do actually believe in that we have the right to private property, based on whether we have invested in the land either through a monetary exchange or through sweat equity. Our original human ancestors would come across land and they would till the soil, or they would build something on it, and that became their land, okay? And then if somebody wanted to buy it from them, they had to use whatever system of exchange was there, okay? So I'm not against money and I'm not against private property. I think there's a lot of programs that we can kind of get polarized into, and it's important to always try and maintain that kind of central alignment to the truth. Doesn't mean that we always get it right, okay? So I wouldn't give them my details, but they took my details anyway, against my will and my consent. Pretty sure that was illegal. I'm not a legal expert, so obviously there's a difference between lawful and legal, right, as well. Lawful is anything that, again, that is wrong, like that is a right, okay? Anything that doesn't violate the common law principles, okay? So not including the acts of parliament that are basically statutes, they're contract law, okay? They're like you and the Crown Corporation, the Queen of England, enter into a contract where you agree to be her subject and she agrees to be your queen, and those are the acts and the statutes of Parliament, and you also agree to be a citizen of the corporation that is the United Kingdom, okay? And when your parents register your birth certificate to the corporation of the United Kingdom, they're basically registering ownership of you over to that company, to that state, okay? And then what they do is they take a bond out on your head. That human resource that's now been registered over to the state, they then take a bond out and they trade it on the stocks and bonds market, on the open stock market, okay? What are stocks and bonds? It's there in the language, okay? Stocks and bonds, you're in bondage, okay? The first stocks, the stocks where they keep slaves in, the first stocks and bonds that were traded on the open market were human resources, slaves, okay? And after the Haitian Revolution, which I keep on telling y'all to go research, they moved from the slavery model to the indentured servitude model because it was cheaper to keep indentured servants than to keep slaves, okay? And that's what many people, most of us, anyone who doesn't have financial sovereignty and is paying to be alive and getting into debt even, is an indentured servant. Okay, so people need to realize the enslavement programs have run so deep on this planet that slavery never actually ended. There's actually more I'm not just talking about indentured servants, okay? I'm talking about people who are actually trafficked as slaves. There's more people enslaved and trafficked around the world today than there was during the transatlantic slave trade. Not to dismiss the transatlantic slave trade, because it was horrific, and the crimes against humanity that were perpetrated were horrific, and it was unique in that they established a system of racism also to keep it in place. We can go into that in another video, but where was I going with this? Okay, so went to the police station. The police were pretty a little bit aggressive with me and not very nice. I could see that with some of the protesters, they were a bit more friendly. I think maybe they knew those protesters already, and like maybe this is just a thing that people just do regularly and get to know all the police and then just sue them every time they get arrested. And I can understand why, because it actually didn't take me very much time at all to sue them, and I actually got a decent payout. So, I can see that some people might even do this as like a money-making thing. That's not what I did it as. But I can see how people would. But, okay, so they put me in the back of a police van and I still had my cuffs on, and then they took me to the police station. And then at the police station, I was informed by the receptionist that I do not have the same natural rights, that I don't have the same rights in that place that I do out there. And I was just like, rights are inherent in nature. Like, I didn't know how to tell him. I was like, he seemed all right, actually. He seemed like a jolly, friendly old man. But I was just like, dude, rights are inherent in nature. It doesn't matter whether I'm in this room, that room, that room, that room. My rights are the same. So, yeah, your rights are inherent in nature. So just because you're now suddenly in a different place, that doesn't take away your natural rights as a human being. They can violate your rights more easily now that you're on their property, but it doesn't take away your rights. It's just, especially if you've been brought there under false pretenses or against your will or without some kind of consensual contract, as I just explained. But they can violate your rights more easily, because obviously, I'm not saying when I say they can, I don't mean that they legally can or lawfully can according to moral natural law. That's not the case. They just physically can, because we live in a free will universe. Okay, obviously, I am very aware throughout this whole conversation of the enormous privilege from which I speak from, being that this happened in the UK, okay? Because Palestinian prisoners who are being held in Israeli detention right now are not getting the same type of treatment as what I enjoyed in this prison cell for the evening. And I'm very aware of that, okay? And I think that it is our duty, this is why I'm telling this, okay? Because it is our duty, those of us in the slightly more free world, none of us are really free, but we do have quite a bit more freedom and privilege in the Western world, just simply because of the pretense that we are supposedly free, that they like to portray in the West. But a lot of that is very fast disappearing, okay? We've seen it, okay, in the videos that we're seeing of police brutality against protesters in Germany's one of the worst, one of the most fascist countries on earth right now, Germany. Obviously, we see it a lot coming out of Israel against their own Haredi citizens who are generally anti-Zionist and actually want a Palestinian state. And there's a lot of Israeli occupation force violence and Israeli police violence against that particular religious community. We obviously see it in the United States, and the United States is a particular case in point because they've been killing black and indigenous people with impunity, and white people as well. Okay, they kill anyone. I'm not saying they don't discriminate. They do discriminate, obviously, by the statistics. You're definitely more likely to be killed if you're black or indigenous, or even just stopped in the first place. But they kill a lot of people, the US police. But yeah, I do think that those of us who have privilege of whatever kind have a moral responsibility to use it in service to collective liberation as much as our capacity allows, okay? This is part of moral karmic law. It's not just about, you in this lifetime. It's about what happens when you meet your maker, okay? Because that's the levels that we're playing with here, okay? When you understand the multidimensional reality of what we're dealing with here, you'll know that conversation that you have once you pass out of your body with whoever it is, whether it's the cosmic Christ, whether it's the arms of the Divine Mother, whether it's Anubis, Osiris and Anubis who weigh your heart against a feather, whatever your belief system is, there are actually in the quantum field belief system territories where people go to during near-death experiences, and that's why a lot of people are having those experiences and then coming back and saying Jesus is real and God is real and all of that stuff. And yeah, God is real, Jesus is real, But there's also belief system territory. So you could go into a belief system territory that's like ancient Egyptian and meet Osiris and Anubis and have that weighing against the feather test. Or, you know, you could walk on a blade, I think is the Islamic or the Parsi afterlife belief system. And there's, you know, Robert Monroe mapped all of this out in his books, Journeys Out of the Body, Far Journey, and Ultimate Journey. It's a trilogy about his spontaneous out-of-body experiences, where he mapped out all the astrals and, you know, the quantum field and the multidimensional reality. And he basically recorded belief system territories where people will go and have afterlife experiences according to their belief systems. And they're vast. They're so vast, because we're not just talking about like human history and the human collective and all the different creation stories that different groups of humans have had, but we're also dealing with belief system territories for all other types of beings. So it's vast, like, but, you know, I don't want to go too deep, you know, and lose y'all. I'm just saying, consider the conversation that you might have with whoever you believe in after you pass. They will map out every single aspect of your life, okay? Maybe, and look, this is true that some people go, well, what if I don't believe in God? What if I just believe that after we die, we go into oblivion? That's where you'll go. I've talked about this in previous videos as well, okay? That's where people who believe that, they will go to a belief system territory like that. Their soul stream will be recycled and go into oblivion, and then the energy will get reused somewhere else, okay? So they can have like a, you know, multi-incarnate experience, but in between lifetimes their consciousness becomes so fragmented that they wouldn't necessarily be able to tap into any past or parallel lives, not easily anyway, until they start reaching a certain level of awakening, okay? We have some very disparaging terms for people like that in the awakening community. One of them is an NPC, or sometimes when they start to awaken a little bit, they'll turn into a kind of matrix agent. It's obviously an allegory from the film The Matrix, because that's often how they can behave sometimes, you know, people who aren't you know, awakened to the multidimensional reality or to God or spirit or just any kind of spiritual belief system. But where was I going? Okay. Yeah, so obviously, because we live in a free will universe, they can violate your rights, but that doesn't mean that there aren't karmic consequences, okay? And this is really crux to understand with natural law, okay? You violate natural law, there are consequences. Always. Always, you will always suffer the consequences, okay? You may not suffer them in this lifetime, but they'll bleed through into other lifetimes, okay? This is what I've seen with my clients, okay? I'm not saying, don't get it twisted, that everything that bad that happens to us in our lifetime is because of some karma in some other lifetime, okay? Don't get it twisted. That is not what I'm saying, okay? I'm not saying that people who are born into poverty or people who are experiencing genocide did something bad in a past life. Never said that, never will, don't believe it, okay? The reason why those things happen is because of being in a free will universe where some beings have chosen to go against God and have chosen to enact, have chosen to do things that go against natural law. They will suffer the consequences. Trust me, okay? This is why the Palestinians keep on saying Allah is sufficient for us and Allah is the best disposer of affairs, okay? I've seen consequences enact in the field, okay, for people who violated natural law in other lifetimes, okay? They do suffer those consequences, and sometimes they suffer those consequences over multiple lifetimes, okay? They have to come back again and again and again and again to fix the mess that they made, okay? So trust and believe. A lot of these Zionists who are going around committing brazen war crimes, or people in Congo committing brazen war crimes and posting it for everyone to see, they will either get completely recycled and dissipated because they're already NPCs, they're already too far gone, there's no soul, there's not even any soul stream left in their body, like the body is almost just like a dark portal, because the soul has become so fragmented and splintered off, and not taking up full residency in the person's body, that they're a dark portal for spirits, for negative entities, demons, and all kinds of nefarious stuff. Okay, and demons can be human as well. Like, I know that stick with me. Okay, a demon is just basically any being that has broken its source connection and chosen to follow the laws of free will. So you don't even have to be evil. You don't even have to be evil to be a demon. You don't, or to be demonic. Demon actually etymologically means genius. It just means that you're following the laws of free will. Obviously, because you're not submitted to the Most High and you're not always observing natural law, sometimes then you can become evil and do really nefarious things. Okay, there will always be consequences. Okay, and there'll be consequences to also when we when we failed, not just when we did the wrong thing, but when we failed to do the right thing, there are consequences to that as well. That's why I keep on, and have for the last few months, been trying to say to people in the awakening community, you're seriously failing this moral test, and there will be karmic repercussions. Okay, you might not feel them in this lifetime. You might not. Okay, you might be fine in this lifetime, and that's good. But everything bleeds through. Okay, like I when I see people's fields, like there's literally aspects of so many other like incarnations and stuff that they're doing in other lifetimes that is bleeding through into this lifetime. So we're not what we've been told. Okay, we're not just this singular like soul stream that is your ego personality in this lifetime. But I was talking about my arrest, and I just went off on one. So they put me in a cell, and the cells in the UK are very cushy compared to in other countries. I mean, I've never been arrested this was the only time I've ever been arrested, but obviously I've read Shantaram. We see that prisons like in India and places like that are just horrific places to be. If you read Marching Powder, oh my god, Bolivian prisons, you have to pay to be there, and like the prisons are actually cocaine factories. It's wild. Read that book. But yeah, so I'm digressing, as I always do. Single mattress, toilet, and then the staff would come over. They took my picture and they took my prints. And this is the thing that you need to know as well if you're arrested. Okay, if they hold any details on you, I don't know about other countries, but in the UK, you can request, they have a whole system of doing this. They don't tell you can do this, but they have a system for people who know this. You can request everything that they have on you, that they show you everything that they have on you, all the evidence that they have on you, everything that mentions you, anything, any files that they have on you, you can ask them to share that with you. And you can also ask for your records to be deleted, because if they didn't charge you with anything, they shouldn't be having, for data protection, they're not allowed to have you on there. So I need to kind of go about that process. I started doing it, but then life got in the way. But that's a fun fact that you should know. So yeah, prison cell was just whatever. It was fine. I was like, I'm fine. I'm not scared. I just try, when I have situations like this, I don't know. I'm just very calm. I always feel really close to God in those moments whenever I've had tyranny staring in my face, like police being violent, or just whenever I've come up against just the system. Sometimes I can lose it. Sometimes I'm not always calm. Okay, that's a lie. But a lot of the time, in the situation like this, I was very calm, because I was just like, everything's gonna be fine. And God was talking to me, and He's like, I got you. You're good. Then somebody next door was like throwing themselves against the door. I think they were probably not being treated very well. I had one police guy come to me, and he was just like, and this is what a lot of the police in there were like. He was like, so you have the right to request water, you have the right to request food, and reading me like what rights I have, like under British law we tend to have quite decent, I mean these are obviously, everybody has all these natural rights, but they've decided to bestow us with these privileges that they call rights. But when he was reading it to me, he sounded like a zombie, and I was just like, oh bless, you're not all there, are you? Like your soul is not even in your body at all. It's probably flying around over there just absolutely mortified, because all he wanted to do was like protect and serve and help people and like do the right thing, and now you're like throwing young girls in jail because they were listening to some music in Chinatown. Like, where did you go so wrong, bruv? Like, I felt so sorry for some of these police. They're so sadly many of them seemed to be on their lower timeline. Unfortunately, that happens to us here on this planet because of all the inversions and all the hijacking and reversals and the spiritual warfare and the targeting that we're dealing with on this planet. That's basically the ninth circle of hell. Like, this is basically Satan's kingdom. If you don't know, if you haven't studied the occult, this is basically like the third dimension is the outer realms of hell. Okay, the Godhead is 12th to 15th dimension, could even go up even higher than that, but we can't necessarily access that as human beings. But I don't want to say that the 0 point is the 0 point hell. I need to think about this a little bit more, because I don't think that the 0 point is necessarily hell, but I think that beyond the 0 point there might be like some kind of like black hole or like some kind of upside down demiurge outer realms or something that would be considered like hell realms, or like a AI, like inorganic type frequency, just like an oppositional energy to the source of all life that is the Godhead. So the third dimension that we are, slowly, gradually shifting out of as we start to become more and more awake, and we start to awake to the multidimensional reality and become awake in all dimensions that we can access as a human. We start shifting into higher dimensions, or just start to be able to move between them. But the third dimension is like ghetto. Like, it's not like we're in hell, guys. So that's what's up here. And if you realize that, then you can start to actually connect to Creator, submit to Creator, and start channeling in those Christ Sophia codes. That is the narrow pathway, the golden stream that connects us back to the Godhead, the anointing, awakening to the one, and your just you submitting to your Creator, you entering into sacred union with the one that birthed you and gave you life, the divine Sophia and her beloved Christ, and the singular 0 point of creation. That just all love emanates from. I'm sorry, I'm having a moment. I'm having a moment with Creator. I'm just really feeling the love. But where was I? Okay, so no love in this policeman's eyes. And then at around 1:30, this police lady comes over. She was definitely taken over. She comes over and she goes, "Your parents are here." Like that. This is how deep the mind control goes, okay? This is how satanic this planet is. That this woman's so indoctrinated into the cult that she thinks that there's something lame or something embarrassing about me having parents that care about me. This is how disconnected people are from those golden Christ streams, from the divine Sophia, from the divine masculine, okay? From the divine feminine, divine masculine, Christ Sophia, whatever name you want to call it, Shiva, Shakti, don't care, Shekinah, whichever tradition you belong to, the Holy Spirit. People are so disconnected that they think that there's something weak it's misogyny. It is actually misogyny, okay? Because for family, the love that emanates from your parents is actually got a very feminine frequency, because we're on a feminine planet, right? And your mother birthed you. So yeah, it's like it's an anti-Sophianic program that she's running that thinks that I would be embarrassed that my parents are there trying to help me get out. Because the system wants you to merge with it, okay? It wants you to see it as you belong to it. Like it's basically the matrix, okay? I've explained this before. The inorganic matrix is basically, it's the womb, it's the artificial inorganic womb of the Antichrist, okay, of the feminine dark alien mother, okay. It's essentially like the pure primordial womb of creation, which divine Sophia emerges from, but inverted, okay, because they basically took her, raped her, and created the architecture of this universe. Okay, we're going really deep now. We started talking about natural law. We're going really deep now. They created the architecture of this universe. Gnostic text talks all about it. Not saying everything in those texts is true, but just read it and you'll start to achieve inner gnosis of some of these things, okay? And there are basically like AI type demonic beings that are siphoning and pulling that primordial womb essence into black holes, okay? And that's what's feeding on all the pain and suffering and the wars and genocides and everything that happens on this planet, okay? They're feeding on us there, okay? So the matrix, the system, the inorganic is basically the womb, it's like an inverted womb of the dark alien mother, and it wants you to believe that she's your mother, okay? That the system is going to take care of you, that the big tyrannical father energy that is the big brother, that's always watching you, and big government and big business, and climb to the top of the hierarchy and vote for this president is all tyrannical father energy. And then you've got just the anti-life systems and the materialism and all of that, which are basically like this kind of like Lilith demonic feminine energy that's like very siphoning, very harvesting, very consumptive. So anyway, back to my point. So my parents show up, and I was just like, oh, like, because since doing all this work, since I found my mentor, and even before I found my mentor who initiated me into the Christ Sophia work, I was doing a lot of sexual alchemy work and repairing my masculine feminine architecture. That's how I found Mark Passio, and a lot of these natural law teachings, all of the natural law stuff I learned from Mark Passio. Please go study his work as well. So he talks a lot about the divine masculine, divine feminine, and inner alchemy, and balancing these polarities on the planet so that we can liberate ourselves. So ever since doing the work, I've basically healed my relationship with my parents, okay? So it's not like we always had the most amazing relationship. It's just this work you don't have to have that as the intention of the work. You just want your life to be better. You're seeking something. You want to connect more to God. Maybe you want to maybe it's selfish. You want to have spiritual powers, okay? I'll admit, like, I wanted spiritual powers too, okay? You got to be careful what you wish for, though, because once you start activating those spiritual powers, it comes with a huge responsibility, and you will have to make certain sacrifices, unless you want to contract with demons and get your power from demons, okay? If you want true power that comes directly from the Most High, you will have to make sacrifices, and it requires a lot of responsibility. So just know what you're wishing for. But yeah, so they showed up and they were like, she was just like, they seem a little bit naive about the process. And I was just like, well, it's your process. It's not their process. They have their own process, obviously, because I'm not submitting to her authority. This is the thing. She's like, the process. the process like it's some universal process, like it's the law, like there's no law that exists outside of this. Is the cage that they have you in. That's another thing that it appears in the field. Sometimes I'll see a person in a cage, or I'll see an aspect of that person's soul essence, that maybe their inner child or something will be in a cage or in a locked box, okay? So it's like entombment program. So it's a part of your consciousness that is literally being locked away, just by just the insidious nature of the language that they're using. They're naive about the process. It's just like, yeah, that's your process, okay? We don't have a contract with you. You've violated my rights. I don't consent to your process. We have our own process. So she was just like, yeah, they have a solicitor for you. Do you want the duty solicitor or do you want their solicitor? I was like, obviously I want their solicitor. She was like, oh, okay. Half an hour later, they released me without charge. So I was just like, I was happy. I was like, thanks so much for picking me up, guys. Like, let's go home. Let's have some tea. And yeah, we stayed up talking. And then I shortly left for Cambodia after that. So some of you who've been with me for a few years will remember I lived in Cambodia. And because this is actually where, for some of you who might be watching, you might be like, oh, fuck, I can't afford to hire a lawyer. Because I went to Cambodia... and I was traveling. I took some time out from modeling, and I was working on my clothing line, which I never ended up launching. But that's what I was doing at that time, because I was working with an ethical factory out there. So I was spending money, not making money. And for that reason, I was able to qualify for legal aid. Basically, when I came back after a year, my mum had basically been saying to me, she goes, you've got to do something about that. You can't just let them take your rights away like that. Like, please look into like suing them or something, or bringing a case against them. And I was just like... look, I can't be bothered. I don't know if I want to. It's great that they let me go. It could have been a lot worse. And she goes, no, this is not on. And, I have to acknowledge, okay, my apple did not fall very far from my tree. My mum is an amazing, super wise, very spiritually gifted woman. And we're very close. She's instilled a lot of this in me, and she was like, no, you can't let that go, okay? You've got to go after them. Like, I'm not having it, because I'm her baby, and if it was my child or just somebody that I cared about, I would also be like mama bear energy. I'd be like, we're going after these people. We're not going to let it go. But because it's me, you still have these like wounds, and just like, oh, I'm just happy that they gave me my freedom back. But actually, I should have had that fire myself. She actually went and did the research for me, and she found a full list of... Because she'd already found the protest solicitor, she basically sent out a couple of emails, or she sent me like a website or something, a list of where to find a protest solicitor. And so I sent out a few emails asking, saying, this is my situation. Can you, and lawyers will always give you a little bit of free legal advice at first, just to let you know what they can do for you and if you have a case. And so some guy contacted me. He goes, okay, we don't deal with this specifically, but you can contact this. He gave me like a list of 4 different law firms. And he goes, ITN in particular, we've had really, really good feedback from a lot of our protesters who've worked with ITN and got really good payouts. And they're specifically protest solicitors. So I contacted them, and I was just thinking I'll do it like no win, no fee or something. I didn't want to pay anything up front, but I just wanted to talk to them anyway, okay? Like, I'm no stranger to, like, my parents are always calling, lawyers and stuff. And, so I know that, lawyers will always give you some free advice. I know people get very intimidated by talking to lawyers, but do not, okay? They need business, just like anyone, okay? So you can make a business inquiry, and you can say, hey, is it okay if I just tell you about my case? And, also you can inquire about things like legal aid. I didn't know that legal aid was a thing until I contacted these people. And then they said, yes, and we can check if they just volunteered. They will check if you qualify for legal aid. What's your financial situation? And so I told them I've just been traveling for a year, so I haven't been working. I didn't own any property at that time. And so they just ran a test and I qualified for legal aid. So that's a really good thing to look into as well if you feel like you might, obviously you don't have to necessarily be off work for a whole year. Like if you're just somebody who feels financially challenged, do look into it because you might qualify. And there's other solicitors who might do it on like no win, no fee basis if your case is really strong. Because battery and unlawful detention are no joke, okay? Those are serious crimes, and probably I could have got even more than what I did. In the end, I told them this is the story, this is what happened. They were like, we definitely think that you have a case and we'll take it on and we'll see if you qualify for legal aid. Okay, you qualify for legal aid, so we'll take it from here. And then they just wrote a statement, and then they would, and my solicitor, Manveer Bhullar, was amazing. I will say, I don't think that they're very, very versed on all the common law versus all the stuff that I've been talking about here, because this stuff is going a little bit deeper, and you need to have a certain understanding of certain spiritual laws to understand this stuff. If you don't, then you probably won't get it, okay? Because it's, I don't know, I don't know how to think about how somebody who doesn't understand the spiritual laws would think about this, because I can't even possibly imagine the different kinds of mind control spells that people are under. But some people actually think that it's insane to suggest that the police or the government or the Queen doesn't have dominion over the people of England, because they do actually believe in slavery. This is the thing that too many people on this planet don't want to admit. They're supremacists, okay? This is why we're seeing so many problems with people not speaking out about what's happening in Gaza, because they don't want to out themselves as being the type of people that just think that this is just the world we live in and that's just what happens, and somebody needs to die in order for us to steal their oil. And there are people that think like this, okay? So, and a lot of people haven't really stopped to think about how deep the mind control goes, okay? And I'm not saying that all the people that think like this are all just evil, nefarious people, okay? These people walk amongst us, okay? They're probably friends with us or in our families or in our workplaces, and they think like this because they're under mind control, okay? So that's why I say we got to clear that shit in the field, okay? Because these are mental slavery programs. So believing in slavery for others or even for yourself is a mind control program, okay? And that's why we're all still living under it collectively, because too many people still believe in it and they don't believe in collective organization and taking our power back. They believe that somebody else has the right to rule over them. So anyway, Manveer Bhullar wasn't too versed on, or at this law firm, they're not too versed on, statutes and consent and things like that, because it does require you standing in your sovereignty as a child under God. And unfortunately, the system wants to perpetuate the idea that God isn't real and that we don't have natural rights. Okay, so I would call it an obfuscation. It's actually a severe obfuscation, and in the fields it will usually appear as usually this kind of mental slavery program will appear as like a Freemasonic checkerboard floor. And it will, sometimes you'll break away, you'll run energy into the, it's basically like a frequency net or a frequency fence that's harvesting your consciousness and harvesting your sweat equity into these dark grids by believing in these kind of mental slavery programs, and that, the government has the right to take away, 40% of your income for taxation, and that's not extortion or theft. So people literally feeding these dark systems up with their life force energy. So we'll run energy into that frequency net at the Freemasonic grid, and it will blast apart. And then sometimes you'll see, like, you know, it can vary, but like, for example, you'll see like the floor of like Mother Earth and the fertile soil underneath, and then that's where your sustenance and your provision and your abundance comes from, by connecting to nature. And like then it can start activating your 12 tree of life and start connecting through like mycelium networks and root networks to other people's 12 tree of life, and you start finding all the other awakened souls and like sharing your gifts. So that there's really cool stuff that we can activate in the field around these issues and these topics. But yeah, she just wrote a letter to the police, and they, you know, started getting a little bit scared. They were just like, oh, we didn't do anything, she violated this and that. And so, you know, she came back and she was just like, well, you know, they said that you've violated this, what do you want to say? And I was just like, well, I didn't even know that that was a thing. So they have to prove, again, like I say, no contract. There's no contract. I didn't know that they had agreed that there's a particular route that I have to stick to if I want to take part in the protest. But at the time that they arrested me, I wasn't even protesting anyway. I was on my way home. So you can't tell me which streets I'm allowed to walk on to get home. That's ridiculous. And yeah, so I noticed that she was using the word lawful a lot, and you know, she was just like, oh, she wasn't considered a protester at that time. She was a woman. So, you know, I think maybe she didn't understand it, but she was using it for sure with the language. What else was there? Yeah, she goes, oh, they've come back to me and said that you told them that statutory legislation doesn't apply to you. Did you say that? And, you know, I was just, obviously I don't understand. I know that she doesn't really understand the stuff, or maybe can't admit to it if she does, I don't know. But I just said, yes, I did say that, because the Public Order Act that they quoted me, I knew nothing about and never agreed to. And they would have to prove that it applies to me. Like, why does it apply to me? Like, I just explained to her very logically, yeah, it doesn't apply to me because I didn't consent to it, didn't know anything about it, and I'm not even in the protest right now. I'm just me, okay? Natural woman. So it's all just very common sense stuff, okay? This is how it's really not difficult, like breaking these programs, but there's just so many of them and they're so insidious that we don't see them. But as soon as you break the pattern by just presenting the truth, speaking the truth, then the spell, you know, the shackles fall off. And, you know, just loads of energy starts to run into the body, and you actually start to become much more sovereign, much more confident, much more embodied, much more empowered, able to stand in your sovereignty, and you just don't take bullshit anymore. You just really don't. So what else happened? Sorry, the story's flagging off a little bit because it was basically a very quick process. She sent a letter, then they sent a letter, then I would look at it, then we'd review it, and I was very active in the process. She was very, very, very efficient, very good. My mum said that she was just like, I think they got scared because you're legal aid. So with legal aid, you're not going to run out of money. They're just going to keep on digging into the government coffers to pay for this. So guys, the system is, you know, there's all these loopholes. You just need to know about them, okay? I'm not like completely anti the system, because I do think that if you understand how it works and you understand it on a deeper level, you can make it work for you, okay? Because obviously those who are initiated into the knowledge that keep it for themselves and hide it from others, and so that they can have power over others, they use it for their own benefit and they violate it all the time, okay? But this is why they always disclose what they're doing, because if you allow them to continue, then you're consenting to it. And that's what a lot of us are doing right now. That's sadly what a lot of people are doing, okay? They're brazenly committing a genocide. It's very obvious that it's a genocide. There's been an ICJ case. They've clearly stated genocidal intent. It's an open and shut case. Easiest case in the world to prove there's a genocide in Gaza, okay? They've clearly said that they're going to invade Gaza, that they're going to kill all the civilians, that there's no uninvolved civilians, they're going to do a genocide, okay? There's no denying it. There's literally no denying it, okay? So everybody that has stayed silent, according to the occult laws of nature, of this reality that we live in, you are consenting, okay? According to their karmic repercussion. I know many people want to say, well, I'm not consenting by staying silent, okay? And there's also an argument for that, and that's also true, okay? But with these satanic motherfuckers and their karmic retribution laws, if you don't stop them, because this is how moral karmic law works, God's law. If you don't stop someone from doing evil, if you see them doing evil and you don't stop them from doing evil, you're also now morally complicit. Okay, this is what I keep trying to tell you. According to moral karmic law, you will suffer karmic consequences for not acting, okay, and not doing something, okay? I'm not saying that everybody has to take 8 months off from promoting their business to talk about Gaza every single day, okay? I've been in a very, God has positioned me to do this at this time, and I was very fortunate to, like, I had, you know, I posted about the motorcycle accident that I had the other day. The motorcycle accident I had a couple of years ago, received my insurance payout for this literally a month before this happened. So I was able to take the time off to do this. Because it's part of my templating, it's part of my source contract, okay, to speak about that region. Okay, this is becoming more and more clear to me the deeper I initiate into this work, how much I was soul contracted to bring forth the information that I'm bringing forth right now. And every single one of you has that same unique template that's coded into your soul's akasha that is waiting to be activated. So yeah, basically they just said, listen, you unlawfully assaulted my client and you falsely imprisoned her, and she didn't do anything wrong, and she was just on her way home listening to a busker. And so after, I think it was back and forth for like just under a year, it was a very, very quick, much quicker than the motorbike accident. The motorbike accident was like, it took 5 years to complete. But this case, and that was like insurance, right? So when you're actually paying for it, they just drag their feet and they're so slow. But when the government is paying for it, and I suppose they are good for some things, it was sorted out very quickly in a year, and I received a payout of £4,000. So I do recommend that if you have experienced any police brutality and if you have a strong case, to contact a protest solicitor. I highly recommend ITN solicitors in the UK, and sue these motherfuckers, okay? Because they probably is baked into the system, and they for the press coverage that they get of arresting all these violent protesters and making them look like they're protecting people from all these dangerous threats to, you know, the national security. If everybody did it, they wouldn't be able to keep on being as violent as they are, okay? And to anybody who says, oh, everybody shouldn't do it because then we won't have enough money for police force, it's just like, well, the police need to then act with moral integrity like they're supposed to according to their oath. So, and if they don't, we have the means to hold them accountable, okay? And if you actually, I know that there are people who actually go the proper common law route, and they can, you know, they can do what my lawyer did for me. They can do it themselves, and they can actually get, I think generally they get a lot more money than what I was able to get, because they really know how to work the system and understand the stuff on a much deeper level. Check out Guardians 300. They are a collective of former police veterans and awakened people that are teaching people about common law. I think you can do a course with them. I haven't done it myself, but I did meet them during all the medical tyranny marches, and they would show up at protests with peace officers who are basically, you know, living men, living women who are trained in common law, and they are there to hold the police accountable. So they will go up to the police and they'll let them know who they are, and they just say, listen, if there's any breaches of the peace and I see that you are not acting on your oath, we will hold you personally responsible, not just in your professional office in your capacity as an officer, as a representative of the Metropolitan Police, but we're going to hold you, the living man or the living woman, personally responsible, which means that they will go to jail if they don't act on their oath. So when I return to the UK, I'm probably going to be doing peace officer training, and I'm going to be researching more natural law, common law, universal law principles, because it's very much part of my templating. If you know anything about Ishtar, I'm going to talk about Ishtar also in future transmissions, because my connection with her is literally only just starting to like take shape. Even though I've used her name for many years now, it's only really starting to become clear to me exactly why that started to happen. It's very cosmic, very synchronistic. You're going to love the story. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. If you have any questions, let me know. Drop a comment. What else was I going to say? Sessions. Okay, you guys have literally like maybe 1 week if you want to book sessions with me to get them at the current price, okay? Because once my website goes live, and it's so close to being live, I'm so busy with my move right now and so many other things that are happening in my life right now that I haven't been able to publish it. But there's just a few little tweaks, and then maybe like in a few days or a week, it'll go live, and then my price will be a little bit higher. Not super loads, but just it'll be a little bit higher. So if you want to get me at the current price, then send me a message on Instagram. If I don't respond to your message straight away, just be a little bit patient, because my messages are super backed up. So yeah, I'll look forward to taking your session. What else? Yes, please also, if you found this content helpful, please also consider supporting Mohammed Fatih's evacuation fund, to safely get him, his mum and his wife out of Gaza so that they can be reunited with their infant son in Turkey. You'll know, if you've been paying attention to my content on Instagram, I've been campaigning for this family for a couple of months now. I've personally verified them. They are suffering a lot. They've lost 27 members of their family in this genocide, including one of their children. So I would really like to help get this family out of Gaza so that they can kind of start over somewhere else and fight for a free Palestine from a safe place. So thank you to everybody who has supported that. We've raised £13,000 so far. Amazing. You guys are amazing. Let's keep that going. If you have already donated, if you can't afford to donate at this time, you can also share the fundraiser. The link is in my bio on Linktree. Okay, if you go to my Instagram, I'll put the link in the description here as well. Okay, and share it with your friends, please. I would really appreciate that and love that so much. Okay, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. One love.